Hello, hello. Now, what you have to understand is I have just briefed him not to be a miserable Cheshire man and to be friendly and happy because you have to when they're northern. Hello, Philip.
Hello. I'm always happy.
Oh, well, yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. Just tight, isn't it? If you come from the Yorkshire. No,
Nothing
no,
like
I
just
don't mean it. I
careful.
don't mean
We call it careful, not tight.
careful. So you're just a careful Yorkshireman. So now we've known each other. I was trying to work it out. What is it? 20 years? Oh my
Something like that.
goodness.
Yeah.
I've taken out restraining orders. I just can't get rid of him. Or is it you can't get rid of me? Never work it out. But it's good to see you. Now, having been an MP for a little while, how many years was it?
19 years.
So probably all the time I knew you then. So it
Yeah, and
drove
I'm
you
still smiling.
just about. He's just in the therapy stages now, aren't you? So, and before that, you worked at Asda, didn't you? And what was your role at Asda exactly?
I did. I was there for 12 years. I started right at the bottom. Always wanted to be a journalist, and so to pay for I was doing journalism, and to pay for my journalism course, I went to work in the cash office at Asda in our Huddersfield store at weekends to pay for my journalism course, and realised at the end of it all that I actually preferred working for Asda to being a journalist. So I jacked in journalism and threw in my lot with Asda. Went on their management training course, and so I did 4 years in store and 8 years at the head office. And I spent most of my time as a customer service project manager, looking after different things like our refund policy and our trolleys and exciting things like that, and ended up as a senior marketing manager. So I had quite a varied time at Asda, but loved every single minute of it.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, you're one of the few MPs that actually did something practical. I don't think there's many of those around anymore, are there? That don't just go straight in. So,
It's true. It's very sad but true.
yeah. So, but they're such different worlds, aren't they? I mean, Asda, well, you just described your time at Asda in marketing and then being a MP. So, but they were both have customer. You're giving me a very strange look now. You're wondering where I'm
Well, I was
going
just
now.
thinking they are very different because in particularly retail is very fast moving. You make a decision and something happens. In politics, you make a decision and nothing happens. So they are very, very different. They are very, very different worlds, and it does take a lot of adjusting to be perfectly honest. That you're used to, things happening and things being fast paced in retail, and things go at a glacial pace in politics, and it is difficult to adjust to.
But did you find there were similarities though as well, particularly because you are actually still dealing with people? A lot of like, particularly weekends things when you're in your constituency, you're going out and dealing with people's problems and trying to help them. And like, were there similarities with the ASDA job?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, they are because at Asda we were reliant on our customers coming through the door each and every week, and in politics you're reliant on the public voting you in to carry on in your job. And unlike most jobs, you have to be voted in every 4 years. That doesn't happen for many people in their workplace. So you have to keep people happy. That's the thing that you have in common. You've got to keep your customers happy, either at Asda, the ones walking through the door, or in politics, the people who vote at elections. So you've got to do the same kind of things. You've got to give them a good service. You've got to look after them. You've got to be responsive. I used to pride myself on replying to people the same day when they contacted me. So if somebody emailed me, I make sure I reply to them the same day. And so yeah, I mean the thing, it's the same principles. You need to have a reputation for looking after your customers and for being accessible and responsive and things like that. So customer service was always a big part of it. And I always thought that working for Asda was a great grounding for going into Parliament. Asda had at the time when I was there 14 million customers a week going through the doors, a full cross section of the public. And I used to think that was a fantastic grounding for going into politics.
Yeah, I can see the similarity there. I expect some of it was quite challenging actually to do with customer service. But when we met, because I was very fortunate to have a Yorkshireman buy me lunch quite recently, this being the Yorkshireman.
Goodness me.
And I know it was sandwiches, obviously, just a basic cheese or something, if I remember rightly. We did push the boat out, really, did we? So the thing that struck me when you were chatting about customer service, then that's how we decided to do this. And some of the things you were saying were really interesting, like little techniques and ideas that I hadn't thought of at all. So what I really wanted to look at is some of the sort of ideas that you have that people can use. And I wondered if you could start with perhaps something that is sort of really brilliant customer service that you've experienced, or something that's really stood out for you that maybe others might not have thought of or would surprise people.
I think the secret to brilliant customer service actually is not some fantastic, great initiative that somebody spent hundreds of years working up that's very, very clever and brilliant. The best customer service is spontaneous often. It's where people know there's a rule and that they know that the person who's dealing with it is breaking it. That's usually makes for good customer service. But it's usually very, very simple things. But it's amazing how many times simple things don't happen. And the thing is, the reason why it's so powerful as well is because usually these things, they're not expensive. It's not, no one's asking anyone to spend a fortune. It's about attitude, really. I went into the US are much better than the UK at customer service. I went into a department store in America last year, Nordstrom's, fantastic department store in the US, and was looking at buying some shoes. And the guy who came over to help me, not only helped me, there were two pairs of shoes that I'd identified that I was interested in buying, and he also came along, which is great selling technique, with another pair that he thought, if I like those two, these would might, have you thought about these as well? And the thing was, usually if you go to a footwear shop in the UK and they sort of virtually throw the shoes at you and leave you to crack on with it. Well, this guy here, he's putting the shoes on for me. He's tying up the laces for me on the shoes. He's untying the laces. I mean, it's the simplest thing in the world, but you think, wow, this is fantastic that somebody's taking this much care over a customer. And the sad thing is, I actually ended up buying all three pairs of shoes. You see, and it just goes to show that actually, subliminally, somebody makes that much effort to you when you're shopping. You want to buy them to be perfect. You don't want to let them down because they've been so helpful. And just doing little things like that's the secret of fantastic customer service. It's the littlest thing in the world. It's like, if I was a garage and I was selling cars, I would always make sure that the car I sold had a full tank of petrol in it. It's a little thing, but somebody's spending literally, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pounds on a car. It's just little things like that. It's like you drive it off the forecourt and you look and you think, actually, there's no petrol in this, and it's like you buy it and you should be elated. You've just bought something and you're disappointed. It's just really small things that make up into brilliant customer service, and unfortunately, most companies don't really give it enough thought as to how they can delight their customers in a very easy way without spending a king's ransom.
Yeah, I think the most common thing is is the mistakes. I think that's the thing we all talk about more, isn't it? Because I mean, I had two companies that I've dealt with this week. I won't mention them, but it's all sort of online and it's very hard to actually speak to a human being. And 5 hours I spent with one over 3 days trying to get an answer. And you think my life's too short. Maybe
Exactly.
it was just unbelievable how I just went round and round in circles. And and the other one had a chat that literally wasn't fit for purpose. And I don't think they'd ever even trialed it, to be honest. So from your point of view, what are the biggest mistakes you see businesses make when it comes to customer service?
I think the biggest one they all make is that everyone talks about customer service, but they don't actually mean it. They know that they're supposed to say it, and they're supposed to believe in it, but they don't actually mean it. And I think that's the biggest problem is that really. Um, but I think the thing is that those that do try to do the right things. I mean, look, some don't care. I mean, the thing is, how many places do you ring up and in a call, and you're on the line, and you get the message to say, "I'm really sorry, but we're particularly busy at the moment," or whatever. Well, they're particularly busy, literally any time of day, any day of the week. So they're not particularly busy. It's just that they deliberately haven't employed enough staff to deal with customers who are ringing up, right? So that, I mean, let's be honest about it. They're not. They might talk about customer service, and they think they've got a customer friendly message on the thing, but it's not. That's not customer service. They're deliberately making a policy decision to reduce their costs and keep the customer waiting, right? And they're pretending that they've got a mad rush on at the moment, and everyone knows they haven't, so nobody's fooled. But I think even the ones that do try and do things that do the right things often get all muddled up. And one example is West Yorkshire Police. They probably don't do this, but years ago when I was an MP and I went to look at the West Yorkshire Police call centre operation, which I was interested in because I used to be the deputy manager of Asda's call centre back in the day. So I'm interested in call centres and things. And they were proudly telling me how they had this policy where people had to answer the phone within 5 rings. And if they didn't answer it within 5 rings, they got a mark against them, and they measured how many calls they answered within 5 rings. Now, the great thing about it was that they were literally trying to do the right thing. They were trying to do something which was responsive to their customers, to make sure customers didn't have to wait long and all the rest of it. But, you can't fault them for what they were trying to do. It was heartening that they were. But I made the point to them that they were, as far as I could see, that this was the worst idea I'd ever heard in my entire life, because it meant that if one of the call centre operatives didn't get to a call within 5 rings, they were then incentivized not to answer the phone at all. Because
True.
If they answered it after 7 rings, they'd be marked down. And of course, by answering the phone, it probably meant that the next call that came in, they wouldn't get that within 5 rings either. So that out of the 2 calls, they'd be marked down for both. So they were literally being incentivized. So once the 5 rings had gone, ignore that call, leave it, and just make sure you get the next one. They were, and they couldn't see that they were actually setting a policy that was giving bad customer service, not good customer service. And I suggested to them that they had a policy of measuring how many abandoned calls there were.
Yeah, it's measuring a different thing.
That would be much more meaningful than setting an arbitrary number of rings, 4, 5, 6. I mean, who's counting apart from them? And so I think one of the other things that many companies do is that they're trying to do the right thing. They've got the right idea, they've got the right attitude, but they then set up a well-meaning policy which actually delivers the exact opposite of what they were hoping.
So from that example, it's really a systems issue, isn't it? It's like a KPI thing. So do you think that those are normally the real problems at the root of poor customer service? It's wrong KPIs, wrong process, rather than people and culture? Where do you think the balance lies?
It's all of them. It's all of them. All of those things are problems. I mean, you have to employ nice people. And if you do employ nice people, good customer service will follow, because those people will instinctively do nice things. You don't need to coach a nice person to give good customer service. They'll do that automatically. The secret is employing nice people. The culture, if you don't have a customer first culture, and where you empower colleagues to make decisions to look after the customer, then you're always going to have a problem. But I think process probably is the biggest single failing, to be perfectly honest. I think it's process. You get all sorts of weird and wonderful processes that companies have put in place, and actually I think sometimes when you ask them, why do you do this? they struggle to answer. I mean, I've been to companies where, that when people go to the customer service desk for a refund, they ask the customer for their address. And I'm saying to them, well, why do you do that? Right? What does it matter what their address is? I mean, they've brought something back. They want a refund. Why do you need their address? And, they start, well, we want to monitor if the same customers coming back all the time. And I say, well, what's to stop them giving any old name and address? I mean, they could say, I'm Mickey Mouse and my address is Disneyland. I mean, what you're not checking the address out. I mean, it's just a pointless bureaucratic system which slows everybody down and hacks off the customer at the end of the
and these days,
end of the day.
You've got the GDPR implications of taking that data as well.
Exactly. So I think often businesses, they invent a process that maybe they even think it's a good process, but I think the biggest problem often though is having a process where you insist a manager signs off on things rather than trusting the colleagues on the shop floor. The people who know best about anything are the people who are doing it all the time, every day, seeing the people. The thing is with, people put process in place. Oh, well, if you want to give a customer above a certain amount, you've got to get a manager to sign it off kind of approach, right?
Yeah.
Well, but why? Why do you do that? Because actually, if you've recruited the right people, then you've got nothing to fear from trusting them to make the right decision. If you don't trust them to make the right decision, then perhaps your problem's with recruitment, not with your process. And the thing is, actually, I think most businesses will find is that when you try and tell your staff to hand out money, usually the problem is that they won't hand out enough rather than they hand out too much. Is that often the employees are more careful with the company's money than the managers would be. So they're trying to solve a problem that actually doesn't even exist. It's not as if they've tried it out, trusting their colleagues, and they were spending too much money, so they've had to put a process in place. They put the process in place first, and it's completely unnecessary. So, I mean, the secret to it all, really, in my opinion, is trust your colleagues on the shop floor, empower them to make the decision. The customer will feel better that they didn't have to hang about waiting for a manager to come over and make a decision. Your staff members will feel happier that they can make a real difference and please their customers and things like that. So whether that's process or culture, I don't know. You could probably have an academic argument about whether that's process or culture, but it's probably a process that is damaging the culture and measuring things that seem important, but where you're creating perverse incentives. I mean, I'll give you a quick example where we had at Asda where we're doing the right thing, but it was a complete disaster. We used to measure queue lengths at the checkouts. I'm sure they still do, but we used to measure queue lengths at the checkouts, which is, of course, the right thing to do because the thing that people hate most or hated most before the self-service times. But the thing that people hate most about shopping is queuing. So it was right to make sure. So we had this policy whereby we said that there should be no more than one person being served and one person stood behind them waiting in the queue. And if there was more than that, then we had to open more tills until they were all open. And we used to ask the checkout operator every 15 minutes to enter how many people were queuing. A prompt had come up to ask how many people are queuing at the till, and they'd have to enter, how many it was. And all that information got fed to the head office in Leeds, which we would monitor at the head office every Monday morning to see which stores had got, unacceptable queue lengths and things. It was really, really important. Store managers would be judged on it. Customer service managers would be judged on it. But of course, what happened was that because it was done by a checkout operator keying in how many people were queuing, customer service managers worth their salt would go to the checkout operators at the start of every shift and say, look, it no matter how many people are queuing at the till, if you can see the back of the queue, put 0, and if you can't see the back of the queue, put 1, but under no circumstances put more than 1. So consequently, some stores hadn't had a queue since 1974, even the week before Christmas.
Right? Never happened. We never saw it.
So it was a completely pointless. It was a completely, and it was worse than pointless because the people in our finance department would look at how much we were spending on wages at the checkouts, and look at the
Oh,
queue lengths
yes, of
and
course.
say, look, we don't need to spend all this money on checkout operators because look, the queue lengths they're all at zero. So we've got
You can
money
get
we
rid
can
of them
save.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, we can get rid of it. So I mean, so occasionally you can often do things all for the right reasons. You sort of check, you even measuring the right things, but you've got to always be aware of perverse incentives because if you set a target and make it really important, the staff will find a way to hit that target by hook or by crook, and it might not be through the way that you wanted them to.
Yeah, people will always find ways around things, don't they? I mean, that is, you've always got to think, what are people going to do in this situation? And I mean, this is all about putting the customer first, isn't it? And thinking about them. And in my experience over the years, I've been working with all sorts of different businesses. Every single one of them have said they put the customer first. Every website you go on, we put the customer first. And yet, actually, you ask them how many times they talk to the customer about their service, or whether they ask them why they've left, why they're not coming back, or how they feel about it. They're very rarely doing it. So when people say putting the customer first, in your view, what's that going to look like? What should they be doing?
Well, it means, I mean, in basic levels, it basically means making decisions which are in the best interest of the customer, not for the convenience of the staff. And usually, that is part of the problem, that the decisions they're masquerading as customer focused decisions, but they're not. They're staff decisions to make their life easier. And you often see it with technology and AI at the moment. Businesses are going to make lots of decisions where it's all about, we're going to do this because we can get rid of 15 people if we do this, not because this will make our customers' life easier, right? And see, the key thing is being customer focused means making the decision in effect for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. I.e., how can we do something to make our customers' life easier, their journey easier, the process easier? It's like putting a pound in for a trolley in a supermarket. It's not for the benefit of the customer, is it? It's so that you don't have to employ as many staff in the car park to collect all the trolleys because they're all kept in one place. That's not a customer service measure. It's a staff service measure. It's a cost saving measure. So I think that's it. I think the other thing as well is about I think you hit the nail on the head when you say, do the senior managers actually speak to customers? I mean, it's a great test actually to see if a company really is customer focused. You have a problem, right, with a company, big company, small company, doesn't matter, right? And you ring up and you say, right, I want to speak to the chief executive. And I guarantee you haven't got one hope in hell of ever speaking to the chief executive, right? The chief executive will never speak to a customer ever that's got a complaint.
Yeah.
So how on earth can they be in touch with what their customers are thinking when there are so many barriers to anyone ever getting to speak to them? How do they ever find out? The only way that they find out what the customers are saying is by what people are telling them customers are saying.
Yeah, and then it's all cleansed through various departments, so it doesn't show anybody up. I had a case of this week in a big sort of cheaps, like one of these places where they pile them high, sell them on cheap. And I went in there for some bits and bobs, and they'd all been given new software that morning to use, and none of them knew how to use it. And they'd basically just been told and left to do it. And so as they were trying to deal with people, they had no idea how to use this stuff. It was driving them nuts. That nobody could give good service because nobody had bothered to ask them whether this was actually going to work for them, and whether it was fit for purpose. So they hadn't actually talked from management down to the ground floor. It was just interesting. Exactly that.
I think it's the best test ever. Can a customer get to speak to the chief executive of a company? And if they can't, that actually deep down that company doesn't really care about customers and doesn't care, because any chief executive worth their salt would want to speak to the customers. They've got the best feedback. So
Yeah.
why would you not want to speak to the customer? Why would you? Why would you put in a process to make sure that they could never get to you? Why would you do that?
Yeah. So often I think it's about being important, isn't it? It's like I'm
Well, who's
too
more important
important.
than the customer? Who's
Yeah,
more important than the customer?
exactly.
You know, and
Exactly.
you know
Exactly.
that's the most important person they're going to speak to that day. And so that would be my basic test of a company. Does the people do the people at the top ever speak to customers?
Yeah, I mean, there's various cases of CEOs going and working on the shop floor as well that have been over the years, and you always feel they're the companies that run the best because they're seeing the little problems that are being met every day.
Exactly. Morrison's. I mean, when Ken Morrison was around, and the owner of Morrison's, you would go around shops in Yorkshire. He'd be there filling the shelves. I mean,
Good for him.
yeah, there was nobody more in touch with what was going on in his business than Ken Morrison, and it showed. You know, attention to detail and things like that. Absolutely, you know, brilliant guy. But yeah, how many business leaders speak to the customers? I think people would probably be shocked to find out how few ever do.
Yeah,
Getting a mystery shopper report, you know, isn't the same as actually speaking to a customer. And it's the same in politics. You know, how many MPs actually speak to their constituents, or how many just get their case manager to deal with it all? You know, how do you know what's going on unless you're prepared to actually
access
speak
it.
to the people who are the most important people in your business or in your organization, and that person's the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So these often, when these people are upset or something has gone wrong for them, they can be quite emotional. And that's quite hard for people to deal with. And I sometimes wonder whether they don't want to talk to angry people because it is actually really hard. So how would you go about handling an angry customer or a constituent? I'm sure you had all your constituents were extremely happy the entire time you were their MP. I'm certain of this fact. So nobody would have shouted you, thrown anything at you, or any of these things. So how did you deal with that, Philip?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly different between a customer and a constituent, because constituents can often be angry because they just don't agree with you about something. And you can't, well, you shouldn't change what you believe in because somebody's angry. You know, you have to stick to what you believe in. And if people don't like it, there's not much you can do about it. So you can't, there's not much you can do in that scenario about angry constituents, if that's why they're angry. You know, if they're angry because you've done something wrong, you've got to take it on the chin. I think the thing is with dealing with angry customers, I think, first of all, it's about how easy it is for them to speak to somebody. I mean, the thing that usually gets people sort of really angry is when they get passed from pillar to post and nobody ever takes any ownership of it. You know, you speak to somebody, oh, you know, you need to speak to so and so. Oh, I need to put you through to this department. Oh, you need to go through to that department. By the time they get through to the right person, they're absolutely bouncing, and perfectly understandably. So I think the thing is, it's trying to, you know, somebody taking ownership of it. You want to try and stop it getting to the to a bad place to start with. But I think, look, I think the fact that you're prepared to face up to what they're saying is a big thing. That you know, you're there, you're listening to what they've got to say. You don't interrupt them. You let them go. When they start off, you don't try and interject. You just let them go and tell you the full story without, you know, that's an important thing. And then I think part of it is trying to genuinely see if there is a resolution. You know, asking customers what would make them happy, what they're trying to get out of this, but what is it I can do that would, you know, that's another thing. I think saying sorry is a really important thing as well.
Yes.
I think often companies they'll use a form of words that they try and look as if they're saying sorry, but they're not actually saying sorry. You know,
No.
sorry you felt like that. I'm sorry. It's not like they don't say, look, I'm sorry we cocked all this up. You know, I'm really sorry. You know, we've clearly done a terrible job here, and I'm really sorry that we've messed up so badly for you. Right? that's much better than I'm sorry you feel like that, which
Yeah, that
doesn't.
just winds people up.
Yeah, you're not actually saying sorry at all. You're basically,
It's resistant.
it's sort of this sort of legalistic kind of thing that I don't want to accept liability for it because they might sue me. It's that kind of approach. But I think people actually genuinely saying, look, we've messed up here. I'm really, really sorry. And then saying, look, how can we put this right? What is it that we can do now? I can't undo what we've done. We've made a complete mess of it. But what can we do now that would make you realise that we are genuinely sorry and we want to put this right? And then you can see whether or not you can meet their expectations or not. I mean, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you've got to accept that somebody, you do something, minor, and somebody says, I want £20,000 compensation. Well, you're not going to be able to, and you're going to have to just be honest and say, look, I'm sorry, I can't meet your expectations. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I can't meet your expectations. By the way, there's no point in negotiating at this point either, because the other thing is this, and this is another thing that I think where businesses go wrong. They treat everything as a negotiation. So somebody comes along and you've cocked up, and you think I'll try and get away with as little as possible here, and you say I'll give you a £50 voucher, right? And the customer says, oh no, I want £100, and you treat it as a negotiation. And if they leave with 50, you're right, as proud as punch that you've got away with them, but actually, all you've done is you've just wasted £50, right? Because you've handed £50 over, and they're never coming. And once they've spent it, they're never coming back again,
No.
right? You've literally just wasted £50. Where if you gave them £100 and they were genuinely happy, that's a much better investment than giving somebody 50 and they're unhappy. Right? So
Such a good point. Such a good point.
The end result isn't getting away with as little as possible. The end result you're looking for is a happy customer. And you've got to assess during the conversation whether you can make them happy or not. If they say it's 20,000 or I can't do that. No point offering them 50, is there? They might take the 50. Well, what was the point? You've just wasted 50. It's just I think you've got to do that. And the final part of it as well is that if you're giving somebody some money, do it with a smile on your face and with grace. Don't slam it down on the counter. Don't slam it down on the counter. I mean, I've seen all sorts of terrible things, where a company's decided to give a customer a refund against their better judgment, and they've literally, slammed it down on the counter.
I hate you. Yeah.
What was the point of that? You've literally just wasted that money. I mean, you've literally just thrown that money away. If you're going to do it, then do it with a smile on your face and with a good grace.
Yeah.
And say, I'm really sorry, and I hope you won't stop you from shopping with us, and I hope we'll see you again soon, and et cetera, et cetera. Don't slam it down on the counter. And all of these things, which sound obvious, to be perfectly, if you say it sounds, but when people sort of human emotion gets going, it's surprising how many times these sort of simple, basic things are not met.
And actually, it goes back to trust, doesn't it? Because if people on the front line feel that they're going to get into trouble for a customer being angry, they're going to try and resist that complaint rather than feeling that they've got the backing of the management behind them to support them and say, okay, it doesn't matter how you dealt with it, you did well, because the problems happen. They always do for everybody. But if you deal with it really nicely, that's the big tick.
Yes, I think the thing you've got to say to your staff all the time is look, we want you to make the customers leave here happy. If you did something that I don't think was the right thing to do, but that was your motivation, then fine. I'm not going to criticize you for that, as long as you were motivated by doing the right thing by the customer.
Yeah,
that's what.
Absolutely. So if you were a business and you wanted to do one thing today or tomorrow that could really improve your customer experience, what would you suggest as a starting point?
I think the most important thing every business can do that most of them don't is to empower your colleagues to make decisions and to look after customers and to do whatever they think is needed to look after the customer. I would scrap any kind of you need to check this with a manager kind of approach. I think empowering colleagues to make instant decisions is the best thing you can do for a customer. It stops the customer hanging around. It motivates your staff. That is and it's amazing how few companies, even the ones who claim to be good at customer service, it's amazing how few companies truly empower their colleagues to make decisions.
I think that's fantastic advice. And you do give advice to companies as well now as a consultant, don't you? Since you've got your own website. Do you want to tell us about your website name? Because it's so funny.
Yeah, so my company name is Nessen, Nessen. It's spelled the same forwards and backwards. I don't know. Is that a palindrome? I can't remember what they.
I don't remember.
I don't know what it was. I'm sure in English I was told what that was. I think it might be a palindrome. Probably not. Somebody I'm sure will correct me about that. But the reason why the company's called Nessen, which is an unusual name, it isn't actually about it's nothing clever about the name being spelled the same forwards and backwards. It was because my great passion in life is horse racing. And when I worked for Asda, there were 4 or 5 of us got together to buy 2 racehorses. We went to the stable, picked out these 2 horses, and the first one we came across, the trainer said, "Well, you need a name for it. Have you got a name for it?" And we decided to call it Nessen Dormer. And I remember saying, I don't think that name will be available. I'm sure other people have used that name for the racehorse, must have done. So anyway, the racing secretary at Kevin Ryan's yard went into her office. You have to check with the British Horse Racing Authority whether you can use the name or not, and came out joyfully to tell us the name was available. And so she'd registered the name Nessen Dormer. But what we didn't realise until the horse was entered to run somewhere was that she'd actually spelt Nessen wrong. Nessen should be spelled Nesun, and she'd spelt it with an E. So there was no wonder the name was available because she'd spelt it wrong. And so when I set up the company, I felt it was the right name for my company because it was a memorable part of my life.
So it's nessen.co.uk, isn't it?
It's nessen.co.uk.
Yeah, and is that the best place for people to get hold of you, through the contact there? So,
yeah, definitely. All my contact details are there. Yeah, definitely.
No, that's great. Yeah, and if nothing else, they'll get fantastic stories.
They'll get some fantastic, some fantastic stories, and hopefully some helpful advice. I mean, I always say the one thing I always say to businesses is that they should always remember one thing, I guess, that they should always remember is 3 letters, which is TLC. And it's not tender loving care, it's think like a customer. That's what you've got to do. You could think like a customer. Don't, just think what is that customer thinking when they come along with what you think is an unreasonable complaint. Put yourself in their position and think, why are they saying this? Think like a customer. People always say, treat customers how you want to be treated yourself. I don't agree with that. I think you should treat customers how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated.
Yes, because your standards might not be high enough.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it's all about TLC, think like the customer. And I guess that's the one thing I would always tell every business.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's been really helpful, very practical as well, which I think is quite hard to come by these days. There's an awful lot of theory out there, and practical experience is hugely valuable. So thank you for your time. It's been lovely.
It's a pleasure. I've
very
much enjoyed it.
You. Yeah. So and hopefully people can get in touch if they want some help. So it's been great to see you, Phil. See you soon.
Thanks ever so much. Cheers. Bye.